I'm curious, what your take is overall on kind of chilly reception Lyft has gotten in the public market so far and what it portends to all the other companies waiting in the wings.
Well, I think you saw on Friday that the markets have entered into, or the Lyft shareholders entered into consensual hallucination with management that this company garners anything resembling this valuation. I want to be clear such that it doesn't seem like I'm piling on. Thursday night, I predicted it would hit $100 and then get cut in half within 6, and it didn't. It hit 90. But this company, companies that trade at what I see as 10 to 15 times trailing 12 months revenues have three things. They have network effects, they have explosive growth, and they have near monopoly power. And this company has one of those things. It does have explosive growth, but I fail to see how network effects, which they mention a dozen times in the prospectus, are in play here. And it's clearly not a monopoly, so I'm very bearish on this.
And so that's what differentiates it from perhaps the Amazon case, where everyone says, hey, look, there was a company that was growing revenue but never had the profitability. But you feel like a company such as Amazon had the network effect, had the lack of competition that Lyft just can't garner.
Well, let's look at Amazon. People gave Amazon a difficult time because it went public while losing money, and the sum of its previous 12 months losses were $5 million. The crown that Lyft has won, and it's not a testament to anything positive, is that Lyft has managed to go public, aggregating the greatest 12-month loss in the history of any company that's come public. They lost $912 million the year before going public. So yeah, Lyft should not, there's a river in Brazil. Lyft should never be used in the same sentence as Amazon.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Amazon getting the news today that it's cutting prices deeper at Whole Foods. And amid a widespread belief, and I guess the data bears it out, that it hasn't really been able to do that much with Whole Foods, why can't a company with Amazon's data and network effects and reach into people's wallets through Prime make something more exciting happen in the retail grocery space yet?
Well, because they don't need to. Amazon has changed the fundamentals of the market, and that is they have replaced profits with growth and vision. And Amazon's core competence isn't data, it's not logistics, it's not fulfillment, it's storytelling. And their vision around focusing on these consumer non-perishable truisms of value, selection, and convenience have captivated the marketplace. And when they take their core asset, which is access to near zero cost of capital, and apply it to a great brand like Whole Foods, lowering the prices, they again kind of demonstrate what I would argue is near monopoly power. So they'll gain share, the stock price will go up, and a lot of good companies that are better employers and better taxpayers are probably going to go out of business.
So, Scott, like sticking in this sort of broader tech space here, I mean, we're seeing a lot of companies sort of reach sort of an inflection point in their growth, and one of them is Facebook. And we had Mark Zuckerberg come out and basically lay out his sort of vision of how he can sort of address some of the potential regulatory issues, or at least head them off. I'm wondering, how much of a threat do you think the potential for some sort of broad national regulation, or even state-by-state regulation for Facebook and some of the other social media and content companies?
Well, it makes sense. Some of his, I assume you're referring to his op-ed in the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Uniform regulation such that organizations don't have to comply with 50 different sets of rules and standards is a good idea. I personally think this is just continued delay and obfuscation. I don't believe that Facebook encouraging people to regulate them after 8 years of delay and obfuscation kind of rings true. It's also a bit of an illusionist trick, because what is required here are the regulation that would restore competitive dynamics, which is really the key here, I think, in terms of Facebook, is antitrust. I believe this company should be broken up into three firms: Facebook, WhatsApp, and Messenger. The regulatory expense line across big tech, whether it's at Amazon, Facebook, or Google, is the fastest growing expense line. They're growing their investments in lobbying faster than technology or AI. So while they may claim to say, we'll regulate us and try and get out ahead of the issue, I think we've all rightfully or justifiably become very cynical.
But to be fair, it's in their fiduciary, I can't imagine it's their fiduciary duty to their shareholders to advocate for some sort of split up of the company, even though some say actually in longer term it could add to more value. But what they are doing is quite proactively saying, look, there is some regulation already working in the EU. Certainly GDPR is put in practice. That could quite easily be taken on board by the US and reenacted. Yes, it's some way helped some of the bigger players, but what more can they do apart from in some way try to already come up with the ideas themselves when on Capitol Hill can come up with no consensus?
I think that's a fair point. I think at the end of the day, he has a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders, and I think he is delivering against that responsibility in spades. There's no evidence. If you just looked at the numbers and you looked at the underlying metrics of their business, there's nothing to say this company isn't doing exceptionally well. Now, having said that, it's our responsibility as citizens to elect politicians that will put in place antitrust and regulatory bodies that maintain our strong history, our proud legacy of breaking companies up when they become an invasive species and they suppress competition, kill young companies in the cradle, and prematurely euthanize big companies that are better taxpayers and better employers. So, yeah, is Mark Zuckerberg doing his job? I would argue yes. It's us and the people in Washington that aren't doing theirs.